Good morning, guys. It is Friday, March the 5th, and this is what we covered for today. We've been talking about globalization. Yesterday, we covered the difference between a domestic and an international business transaction. So let's do that review before we cover any new stuff. All right, so Teresa ordered a Pandora poodle charm on eBay. It shipped from China. It arrived 3 weeks later. What type of business transaction is this? So this is a charm that's coming from China, so from a different country to the United States. So that would be an international business transaction. So for our new material today, the two main ones that you guys may have a little trouble with are absolute advantage versus a comparative advantage with countries. So you guys know that countries produce a lot of different products and services. Well, sometimes those countries are competing against each other, and then sometimes some countries can't even compete because they can't make that product at all, or maybe they don't have that natural resource, or they don't have enough land. So that's what we're looking at today. The difference between whether or not a country has an absolute advantage over another one, or if it has a comparative advantage. When you think about an advantage of something, like I have an advantage of reaching stuff that's up high because I'm tall. I have a disadvantage of, let's say, running fast. Even though I'm tall, I'm not very fast. I was not born fast. I can't sing. I can draw a little bit. So some things we have an advantage and some things we have a disadvantage depending on the gifts that we have and depending on how much we practice. So this is very similar to countries. So when a country has an absolute advantage, that means that they can make something or can produce something because of their land, their natural resources, their weather. So for example, we know in the United States, there's only certain states like Florida, California, that are warm enough to grow stuff like bananas and avocados and lemons and limes and coffee. And Hawaii's good for coffee too. But some countries like Brazil and Colombia, they're amazing at growing that stuff because their climate is always hot and it's always tropical. Where countries like Norway, they're cold. So they're not growing many like sweet potatoes and crops really at all in Norway because it's so cold. So when a country has an absolute advantage over another one, it would be because they have, nature has given them the ability to be good at something. So for me, I feel like I was born with the gift of being athletic. So it's just kind of something I've always been good at. Never really had to, I did practice, but I've never really had to practice a lot to be, a pretty good athlete. Whether it was basketball or volleyball or softball, I've just always been pretty athletic. Now with comparative advantage, it's a little bit different. With comparative advantage, it's like taking two athletes and then putting them up against each other. So let's say you got Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. They're both amazing basketball players. If you take them at the same age and you put them against each other with shooting, 3-point shots, it's going to be a tight race to see who's going to win. And it really just depends on who has practiced the most. It's kind of like your singers. You got two different singers. One may have a little bit more fine-tuned voice than the other one because they've practiced more. So that would be a comparative advantage when we're talking about countries. So this would be countries that can produce stuff, so like cars and cell phones, computers, but one country seems to do it better. Like when we think of technology, there's a lot of countries that produce technology. But when we think of quality technology, we think of Japan and the United States. Like there's a lot of countries that produce cars. But when we think of really high quality cars, we think of Japan with the Honda, the Nissan. We think of the United States with Ford and Chevy. We think of Germany, like with the BMW. Even though a lot of countries make the cars, some countries have just found a way to do it better. So we're going to watch a couple of videos to try to help you understand these differences a little bit better. So this first video that we're going to watch is an absolute advantage. So Colombia has the absolute advantage over other countries in producing coffee just because of their landscape.
The cultural coffee landscape covers specific areas in 47 municipalities, where approximately 25,000 farms, each with a small coffee plantation, house 85,000 people who dedicate their lives to this crop as their main economic activity. The landscape is an outstanding example in which a human group has developed a particular way to use the land and a representative culture, making this an outstanding example of the interaction between man and nature in this particular environment.
Okay, so you guys can see, just based on the natural resources of Colombia, they can produce more coffee than almost any other country in the world. So they would have an absolute advantage over the United States for growing coffee just because of their landscape and their climate. All right, now for your comparative advantage, this would be your top 10 car manufacturing companies in the world. So there's a lot of companies that make cars, but these companies do it the best. Kia. Toyota. Datsun. Which is the Nissan. Chrysler. BMW. So you guys saw on the top, what, like 5? Japan was up there with a Nissan Toyota. We've got the United States up there with a Chrysler, and then Germany up there with a BMW. So those countries would have a comparative advantage over the other countries because they found a way to really produce high quality, good selling cars. All right, so let's continue with our PowerPoint. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of these examples. An absolute advantage exists when a country can produce a good or service at a lower cost than other countries, or they have better resources. So here's 3 examples. Russia, the United States, and Saudi Arabia produce more oil than any other countries in the world. Colombia produces more coffee because of their landscape and weather. Aruba has some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, so some travelers just want to go to the beach and they'll choose Aruba just because they have an ocean. Some countries are landlocked, so travelers don't want to go to the beach in a landlocked country. All right, your comparative advantages, a situation where a country has specialized or has really become great at producing a certain product or service. So it's kind of like practice makes perfect. So I've given you 3 examples. The United States, China, Germany, and Japan, they all have great manufacturing processes. So we would have the comparative advantage over other countries that mass produce stuff, but we just found a great way to do it better and faster. The United States, China, Japan, and Singapore have a comparative advantage with electronics. So we just do it better. And then with the United States, Germany, and Japan, we have better advantages with technology and transportation equipment. All right, so let's do some visuals. So these countries right here in the blue, they would have the absolute advantage over these countries in the red because these in the blue actually produce oil. They have crude oil as a natural resource. These countries over here don't produce any oil hardly at all. So these countries in blue would have the absolute advantage over these countries on the right because we have oil production and they don't. With comparative advantage, you guys see all countries around the world could produce cars, but China has found a way to produce more faster. So China's at the top of that list for producing the most cars in the world. Some helpful hints, absolute, you might see in a question, maybe the country makes the most money, maybe they have the best or the most natural resources, or maybe the quality of their natural resources is just better. With comparative, normally you see like a per worker. So somebody is doing it better by the hour, or they're doing it faster with less employees. So they're doing it more resourcefully. Same type production process, but some country has found how to do it faster or better. So here's 3 examples. So the first example, China produces $8 million in cars by the hour. The United States produces $6 million by the hour. China would have the comparative advantage over the United States when producing cars by the hour. The second one, Aruba has the best beaches and attracts the most travelers worldwide. Aruba would have the absolute advantage over other countries because of their beaches. And then the last one, Sam washes 6 cars by the hour. Julie washes 8 cars by the hour. So Julie would have the comparative advantage over Sam because she washes more cars by the hour. And this would be like 2 test questions. So the first one, the United States has become globally known for its production of wheat more resourcefully than China. It can produce the product with less human resources. So the United States would have a comparative advantage over China because both countries produce wheat, but the United States just produces it faster. But it's because we have those huge tractors. In China, they're still harvesting wheat by hand. The second example, Alaska produces more salmon than any other state that exports salmon because of its location and climate. So that example would be an absolute advantage. There's a lot of countries that don't have salmon because they're not located next to an ocean and they're too hot. And the last piece we're going to talk about today are importing and exporting. So an import, that's when you're bringing a product into your country. So we get bananas, coffee, and cocoa from Brazil. We get oil from Saudi Arabia and rubber from Japan. And then exports is when you're sending goods out of your country. So we send trees to Germany, we send cereal to South Korea, and we send meat to Hong Kong. So imports, you can think about it, are coming in to a country. Exports are exiting the country. And that's what we covered for today. Be sure you guys are working on your projects. Remember, those are due next Friday. Go into Canvas and do your exit ticket, and I'll see you guys Monday.